The holding pin smelled like antiseptic and fear. Cold blue lights hummed overhead, casting long shadows across the grated floor. Xalen Zarris sat on the edge of a metallic bench, his wrists shackled by something that looked like a cross between silicone and seaweed. He flexed his fingers. The material shifted slightly but held firm. Across the room, behind a transparent barrier, a cluster of alien beings stared at him, 8 in total, each a different shape, color, and configuration of limbs. Their eyes, or what he assumed were eyes, tracked every movement he made. But their attention wasn't entirely on him. It was on the dog beside him. Her name's Mellow, Xalen said, his voice dry from hours without water. She's a therapy dog. Helps people stay calm. You know, mental health. None of the aliens responded. One of their number, a tall green-skinned being with a narrow head and no visible mouth, held a tablet-like device. It tapped the screen with one of its 3 knobby fingers. Mellow shifted her weight and rested her fuzzy head on Xalen's knee. Her tail gave a single, hopeful wag. He scratched behind her ears. She's not a weapon, Xalen added. She's trained to recognize stress responses and provide comfort. The green-skinned alien turned to the others and let out a low warble. The others murmured in response, exchanging glances that ranged from skeptical to outright alarmed. Xalen sighed. You're all zoologists, right? Studying Earth species? Then you have to know dogs aren't dangerous. Well, not therapy dogs. Not this one. A short, round alien with translucent skin shuffled forward and pressed a button on the wall. The barrier hissed open. Xalen tensed. Another alien entered, a tall, insectal creature with 4 arms and a long neck. It carried what looked like a containment wand, glowing faintly at the tip. Carefully, it approached Mellow. Mellow, stay, Xalen said, his tone gentle. The dog didn't move, though her ears perked up. The creature extended the wand toward her, and she gave it a curious sniff. The wand beeped. The alien recoiled. The translucent one clicked something on its wrist. An automated voice translated into English. Specimen emits distress pheromones. Unknown origin. Possible toxin. Xalen frowned. She's not poisonous. She's just a little nervous. You dragged her onto a ship and haven't given her food or water for hours. No known species emits this chemical blend, the voice continued. Possibility. Aggressive evolutionary defense? She's a golden retriever, Xalen said. Not a damn acid-spitting lizard. The insectal alien took another cautious step forward. Mellow stood up and wagged her tail, tongue lolling out in a friendly grin. The alien froze. She wants to say hi, Xalen said. She's friendly. Just let her sniff you. The alien looked toward the group, then back to Mellow. Slowly, it lowered itself to one knee. Mellow stepped forward and licked the creature's face. Pandemonium erupted. 2 of the observers slammed their hands on control panels, shouting in high-pitched tones. A red light began flashing. The insectal creature stumbled backward, slipping on its own many legs and crashing into the wall. Mellow sat down calmly, tongue still out, tail thumping with casual joy. She licked him, Xalen muttered. She licked him, and you all act like she detonated. A new figure entered, tall, elegant, and covered in slick blue-gray skin. This one wore a uniform with a silver insignia. It raised its hands, and the commotion died down. I am Director Lurox, it said through the translator. Lead of the Intergalactic Zoological Study Commission. Xalen gestured to his restraints. Think you can take these off? I'm not exactly a threat. Neither is she. Lurox tilted its head. You brought a high-risk organism into an unauthorized research zone. We have reason to believe it possesses advanced biological weaponry. She's a therapy dog, Xalen said, for what felt like the 100th time. Lurox turned to the group. Begin Phase 2 analysis. Isolate the subject. Initiate stress trials. No, Xalen said sharply. You're not putting her through anything. She doesn't understand what's happening. She will not be harmed, Lurox said. I'm not reassured. 2 aliens entered with a hovering containment pod. Before Xalen could react, Mellow was lifted inside by a gentle suction field. She barked once, but didn't struggle. Let her go. Xalen lunged, but the restraints yanked him back. Pain shot through his wrists. Lurox approached him. We are not your enemies, Xalen Zarris. But we must understand what this entity is. It has biological signatures we have never encountered. You may observe the process. The screen on the far wall flickered. Mellow appeared inside a clean white chamber. Soft lighting, padded floor. No obvious threats. A low hum began. Colored lights scanned her form. She lay down and rested her head on her paws. "She's scared," Xalen said. "This isn't analysis. It's psychological torture. No, we are testing stress response. Your species has made claims of emotional cognition in these animals. We need confirmation." A panel opened in the chamber. A robotic drone floated out, emitting a low static buzz. It circled Mellow, flashing lights in her eyes. She let out a small whine. Xalen's fists clenched. "Stop it. She's not a machine. She doesn't understand what's happening." Lurox turned to him. "Then explain." He stared at the screen. Mellow was now pacing slowly, tail low, ears back. "She's reacting to confusion. She doesn't know what that drone is. It's not fear yet. But if you keep pushing, it will be." On the screen, the drone extended a mechanical arm and tapped her gently on the back. Mellow jumped, turned, then sat down, tail tucked beneath her. Xalen exhaled. "Please, let me go in there. Let me show you what she does." Lurox studied him for a long moment. "If you go in, you will be monitored. Any aggression from either of you will result in immediate containment." "Fine," he said. "Just open the door." The restraints unlatched. He stood, rubbing his wrists, and followed a pair of escort drones down a corridor into the observation chamber. Mellow looked up as the door opened. Her ears perked. She barked once, then bounded toward him. Xalen dropped to his knees. She nearly knocked him over as she licked his face and leaned against him, tail wagging furiously. He hugged her tightly. "You okay, girl?" She let out a happy woof. The aliens watched from behind the glass, murmuring again. "This is what she does," Xalen said loudly. "She senses distress. I'm stressed, she comforts me. Humans do this with her. Veterans. Children. Hospital patients. She doesn't attack. She heals." Lurox's voice came over the intercom. "You claim the organism identifies emotional instability?" "Yes." "Demonstrate." Xalen looked at Mellow. "Okay, girl. Watch me." He took a deep breath, then began to simulate a panic attack. Rapid breathing, clutching his chest, rocking slightly. Mellow immediately moved to his side, placing both front paws on his knees. She licked his face, then leaned her body against his. "She's grounding me," he said, still breathing heavily. "She's trying to stop the spiral." Lurox said nothing. Mellow whined softly and nudged his hand until he pet her. "See? She knows." There was a long pause. Then the door slid open again. Lurox entered, alone. "Extraordinary," it said quietly. "Our species does not engage in physical emotional support. This concept is foreign." Xalen stood slowly. "She's not a weapon. She's a partner." Lurox approached Mellow cautiously. The dog tilted her head, then wagged her tail. "She does not perceive me as hostile?" Lurox asked. "Of course not. You're not angry. You're curious." Lurox extended a hand. Mellow sniffed it, then leaned forward to rest her chin on it. The alien blinked. "Fascinating." Xalen nodded. "She's the gentlest creature I've ever known. You were afraid of her because you didn't understand her. Now you've seen what she really is." Lurox withdrew its hand. "We will suspend further biological testing. Observation will continue, but no harm will come to her." "Thank you," Xalen said. Mellow gave a happy bark. Behind the glass, the others continued to watch, scribbling notes and murmuring in disbelief. But something had shifted. They were no longer afraid. 2 days after the panic over Mellow's biological threat profile, Xalen found himself in a habitat chamber that had been hastily retrofitted to accommodate 2 Earth organisms. The room was a curious collage of human comfort, an alien over-engineering a soft mat that vaguely resembled a mattress, a water dispenser resembling a chrome mushroom, and a food station that dispensed something suspiciously beige and odorless until he'd insisted on preparing meals himself. Mellow was sprawled belly up on a synthetic grass patch, snoring gently with one leg twitching. A hovering drone the size of a basketball floated nearby, recording her sleep patterns. When it beeped softly, she snorted and shifted, one ear flopping over her eyes. "I told you she needs quiet when she's resting," Xalen said to the drone. It retreated a few feet and dimmed. The door to the chamber dilated with a hydraulic sigh, and a familiar long-limbed figure entered. Dr. Kex, the insectal researcher who had nearly fainted during the initial encounter, now wore a harness rigged with various scanners and vials. He held a small crystalline tablet in one clawed hand and a rubbery object in the other. We have replicated the object she carried in her mouth yesterday, Kex announced. You mean the tennis ball? Xalen took it. Looks decent. She initiated complex retrieval behavior when you hurled it. We assume it is a training exercise. It's fetch. It's also fun. Fun. Yeah. Non-utilitarian enjoyment. Try throwing it. Kex looked at the ball, then at Mellow, who now had one eye open. He reared back and flung it with a stiff, awkward motion. The ball bounced once, hit the wall, and rolled under the food dispenser. Mellow blinked, stood, stretched with a theatrical yawn, and trotted after it. She's not a machine, Kex, Xalen said. She doesn't retrieve on command like a drone. She responds to your enthusiasm, your vocal tone, the anticipation of reward. Exactly. That's what makes her special. She chooses to engage. It's not programming. It's trust. Kex tapped the tablet. We've translated over 200 hours of video footage from Earth. It appears you use these animals in hospitals, war zones, courtrooms, and airports. Some people get anxious flying. Mellow's job is to help with that. Kex paused. How is it that this species, lacking armor, claws, or venom, became so widely valued? Because they listen, they comfort, and they never judge you for falling apart. The alien tilted his head. There is no analog in our culture. Emotional vulnerability is typically concealed. Mellow returned with the ball, dropped it at Xalen's feet, and sat, tail thumping. Maybe that's why you all freaked out, Xalen said. You saw something you couldn't quantify. A creature that doesn't dominate or submit just connects. Kex knelt, extending a hand. Mellow licked his fingers and then leaned into his side. I believe I am experiencing mild cardiac acceleration, Kex said, voice quivering. My thoracic cavity is warm. That's called affection. Kex stood abruptly. I must recalibrate my biosensors. The door slid open again. This time, Lurox entered, flanked by two smaller assistants with leaf-like appendages. The council has reviewed the footage, Lurox said. They have questions about the neurological interface between human and canine. They suspect subliminal influence. Xalen narrowed his eyes. You think she's controlling me? We cannot rule it out. I've had Mellow since she was 3 months old. If she had mind control powers, she'd have used them to get more snacks, not to stop me from crying in elevators. Lurox gestured to the assistants. One held a thin, translucent cap covered in nodules. We request a neural synchrony trial. Harmless. Non-invasive. Xalen hesitated. Mellow sat beside him, head tilted. Fine. But I'm staying with her through the whole thing. We anticipated that. Half an hour later, Xalen sat in a softly lit dome. Electrodes lined the ceiling, blinking in slow pulses. Mellow lay beside him, her own cap held in place by a custom-fitted harness. A shallow hum filled the space. A voice from the observation room crackled through the speaker. Begin guided empathy link. A faint vibration passed through the floor. Xalen closed his eyes. He felt nothing at first, just the warmth of Mellow's body against his leg. Then a sharp clarity, like a breeze through his thoughts. Not words, not images, but impressions, grasped beneath paws, the joy of a familiar scent, the pull of loyalty as strong as gravity. Her awareness brushed his in gentle waves. She's not manipulating me, he said aloud. She's showing me what she feels. The hum intensified. And then a surge of uneasy metal walls, unfamiliar smells, the echo of strange voices. A quiet fear, not for herself, but for him. She had worried when the aliens took him. She had waited for his return, ears alert, heart thudding like a drum. She was scared I wouldn't come back, he said, voice cracking. The dome dimmed. The connection ended. Lurox and Kex entered once more. We detected mutual limbic resonance, Lurox said. No coercive neural patterns. But the depth of the connection is unprecedented. She loves me, Xalen said simply. And she worries when I'm gone. That's not a trick. That's what real loyalty looks like. Kex tapped a few notes onto his tablet. Several species form bonds. But the bidirectional emotional mirroring this is unique. She doesn't need to be unique to matter, he said. She matters because she chooses compassion, even when you don't deserve it. Mellow trotted over to Lurox, tail wagging. The director knelt, tentatively touching her head. There is a delegation arriving tomorrow, Lurox said without looking up. Representatives from 9 civilizations. Some are less tolerant of biological uncertainty. I'm not giving her up. They demand assurance, a demonstration of her utility. If we fail to justify her presence, they may insist on extraction. Extraction to where? That is not disclosed. Only that she would be studied indefinitely. Xalen stood. You put her on display, and I walk. You are not free to leave. You think I won't find a way? Lurox met his gaze. Then make them understand. You have one day. Xalen glanced down at Mellow, who had settled at his feet again. Then we do it my way. Later that cycle, he stood alone in the chamber, sketching with a stylus on a nearby console. A layout took shape, a simple room, low lighting, soft surfaces, and a single chair. Across the corridor, Kex watched silently. What is this design? Kex asked. A scenario. Something real. Something they can feel. You intend to simulate an Earth event? No. We're going to recreate one. Kex leaned in. What kind? An anxiety episode. Induced but safe. I'll guide it. Mellow will do the rest. The insectal alien hesitated. You are willing to suffer for this demonstration? I've done it before. It's called exposure therapy. He tapped the final note on the layout. And this time, she won't be alone. Neither will I. Kex looked down at Mellow, who had begun to doze again, tail curled over her nose. You humans, he murmured, are more difficult to categorize than any species we've observed. Xalen smiled without humor. That's the nicest thing anyone said to me all week. The demonstration chamber had been modified overnight. Where it once resembled a sterile evaluation room, it now bore the careful detail of a human counseling office. A reclined seat upholstered in soft charcoal fabric faced a low table. The walls had been subtly tinted to a warm neutral hue, and the overhead lighting adjusted to a gentle amber tone. A small speaker emitted a barely perceptible hum, no rhythm, no melody, just a low vibration like distant wind. Xalen paced behind the one-way observation panel, rubbing his wrist where the neural sensors had been attached. They itched faintly, a psychosomatic after-effect. Across from him, Kex adjusted the calibration monitor while Mellow waited patiently on a cushioned mat in the corner of the chamber, tongue out, tail still. She's ready, Xalen said. You are certain you can provoke a sufficient psychological response? Kex tapped a control node. The delegates will arrive within 6 minutes. I've lived with anxiety since I was 17. I don't have to pretend. You will not be administered any neurostimuli? No drugs. No implants. Just memory. Kex's antennae lowered slightly. If your vitals exceed the threshold, the simulation will terminate. It won't. Mellow shifted her weight and looked up at him, the barest flick of her ears betraying awareness. She wasn't confused. She was waiting. When the delegation filed in, they took their places behind the transparent partition in silence. No introductions were exchanged. These were not the curious scholars from earlier. These were the adjudicators, the ones who decided what was permitted to exist in shared space. Their physical forms varied wildly. One floated in a gelatinous shell, another appeared to be entirely composed of woven fibers, but their expressions, if readable at all, were uniformly unreadable. Kex addressed the room. This is a stress-effective trial. The subject, a human named Xalen Zarris, will undergo a simulated emotional breakdown. The companion organism will respond autonomously. No verbal commands will be issued. The lights in the chamber dimmed further. Xalen stepped inside. The door sealed behind him with a soft hiss. He took a seat, leaned back, and stared at the ceiling. Mellow stayed where she was. She knew the drill. He closed his eyes and let the silence sink in. Then he summoned the memory, the night in the hospital corridor, the white tiles, the voice on the phone, the way sound had drained from the world. His breathing changed. Shallow. Uneven. Mellow stood. He let his hands tremble. Let the tightness build in his chest. The delegates had data streams now, showing pulse, blood pressure, oxygen saturation. But no monitor could show what was happening inside his ribcage. He curled forward, elbows on knees, head in his hands. Mellow approached, slowly. He started rocking. Subtle at first, then more pronounced. Mellow sat beside him and leaned against his leg. He didn't speak, didn't acknowledge her. His fingers clutched at his temples. She nudged his arm once. When he didn't respond, she placed her head gently on his knee. The rocking slowed. He exhaled, shaky, and let his hand fall to her head. She stayed perfectly still. After another minute, he straightened slightly. His breathing steadied. He blinked twice, then looked down at her. She looked back. He whispered, "Good girl." The lights returned to baseline. Kex's voice came through the speaker. The trial is complete. The door opened again. Xalen stood and patted his thighs. Mellow followed him out of the chamber, tail low but relaxed. In the observation hall, the delegates remained in place. One, shaped like a spiraled column of mineral plates, emitted a low chime. Was this behavior conditioned? No, Xalen said. She wasn't trained to read my pulse or breathing. She was trained to be attentive. The rest is instinct. Another delegate, the one resembling a segmented lattice with bioluminescent joints, rotated slightly. There was no command issued. None. A third spoke, its voice a flat vibration through the floor. You simulated distress. This proves nothing of her function outside your presence. Xalen turned to Kex. Run the projection footage. The wall display activated, showing a compilation of 20 short clips from Earth. A child sobbing on a hospital bed, a dog climbing up to nuzzle them. A soldier in a panic attack on a train station floor, the dog curling beside him. A woman hyperventilating in a courtroom hallway, her service dog applying pressure with its body. None of the dogs were mellow, but their behavior mirrored hers. The clips ended. Silence returned. The gelatinous delegate rippled. You claim this species has been bred across generations for this purpose? Not entirely. Originally, they were hunters, then herders, then companions. We shaped them, but they shaped us too. The fiber-bodied delegate leaned forward. Why create a creature for emotional labor? Because some wounds don't heal with medicine or time. You need presence. Something that says, I'm here. I see you. The mineral-plated delegate clicked. And you believe this justifies her presence on this station? I believe it justifies her presence anywhere. There was a pause. Then the gelatinous delegate receded. We accept the organism's classification as non-hostile. The others followed. Kex exhaled through his upper spiracles. That could have gone worse. Xalen knelt beside Mellow. You did great. She licked his cheek once and sat, satisfied. Later that cycle, long after the delegates had departed, Lurox entered the habitat chamber unaccompanied. Mellow didn't rise but watched him calmly. You have succeeded, Lurox said. She may remain. That wasn't the point, Xalen replied. Explain. The point was never permission. It was understanding. Lurox studied Mellow. Her presence altered our assumptions. That is rare. Maybe you should let more dogs into your research labs. You are not wrong. Mellow pawed at the cushion, turned once, and flopped down with a sigh loud enough to make Kex, watching from the corridor, flinch. She does that when she's satisfied, Xalen said. She has reason to be, Lurox replied. We all do. Mellow dozed off again, completely unbothered by the fact that she had just redefined interspecies diplomacy through the power of empathy, a big head, and absolutely zero venom glands. Xalen leaned back in the modified chair and looked at the ceiling. The first time in days he hadn't felt watched. Next time someone calls her just a pet, he muttered. I'm showing them the footage. Lurox didn't respond. He simply sat beside him, in silence, watching the dog breathe.